I woke up on a 2-meter wide bed, nursing a pounding headache from last night's hangover. Staring at the stretch of greenery outside the window, I sighed sincerely. Wow, what a great view. Then my foggy brain finally caught up. Since when did the shabby little apartment I rented come with a huge lake and an enormous lawn outside? A buzzing sound drew my attention. On the bedside table lay the latest iPhone 17 Pro Max, worth an entire month of my salary. The screen lit up with an incoming call labeled Husband. It rang only briefly before the call ended. I had no idea why I was here, but snooping through someone else's phone was incredibly rude. I got out of bed and headed to the bathroom, planning to take care of basic needs first, then find the owner of the place and thank them properly. I was probably so drunk last night that I passed out on the roadside and got picked up by a kind stranger. My clothes were clean and dry, and I was even wearing fresh ones. It was obvious someone had already cleaned me up. Thinking about that made my cheeks warm. It was kind of embarrassing. I was slightly nearsighted, so I didn't notice the sticky note on the mirror until I stepped right up to the sink. Call me back after you're done washing up. To the left was a toothbrush already loaded with toothpaste and a cup filled with water. This level of thoughtfulness. Could the owner be an Omega? My brow twitched. The Federation's Omega Protection Protocol flashed through my mind, followed immediately by the husband caller ID from earlier. My heart sank halfway into my stomach. There was a good chance I'd been brought home by an Omega last night. An even worse chance that their husband already knew. If I walked out later, I might get dragged off by the police, or beaten half to death by a furious alpha waiting at the door. The more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. Hands trembling, I finished washing up, grabbed the phone, and returned the call to husband. The call connected almost instantly. A low, magnetic male voice came through the receiver. Hello, wife. Just that single word, wife, nearly made my legs go weak, and I was an alpha. The man on the other end had to be a top-tier alpha. Someone completely out of my league. A defective alpha like me couldn't even begin to compare. I said awkwardly, Hello, sir. Your wife left their phone behind. Your wife is a very kind person. They let a drunk, unconscious, defective alpha like me stay here for the night. I'm inferior, I swear. Your wife definitely wouldn't look at someone like me. Please hear the sincerity in my voice. And I was unconscious. I didn't do anything. A soft chuckle came from the other end. Dylan, the man said lightly. It's Alistair. Alistair? The newly appointed president from 3 months ago? The chairman's own son? My eyes widened in disbelief, but what followed left me even more confused. Alistair laughed again, his voice as gentle and warm as ever. There's food and hangover soup prepared in the kitchen. Don't forget to drink it. Oh, and I've locked all the doors and windows on the first and second floors, so don't think about leaving. If you need anything, feel free to message me. I'll only be keeping you for 1 month. Is he planning to imprison me? I didn't dare ask that question out loud. I was terrified of getting an answer I wouldn't be able to handle. Back when I was still with my Omega boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend, I'd seen TV dramas with similar plots, where a male alpha liked a male Omega so much that he locked him away. But there was no way Alistair and I fit that scenario, which meant there was only one possibility left. My voice trembled as I said, President Alistair, if you want to fire me but don't want to pay severance, you really don't need to lock me up like this. He seemed amused by my bizarre train of thought. After chuckling twice, he finally replied, Wife, it's because I like you. I really, really like you. I like you so much I'm about to lose my mind. On the 3rd floor, the room on the left has a game console and a high-end computer. The room on the right is for snacks, every kind you can think of. Just don't eat too much. Junk food isn't good for your health. If you need anything else, just tell me. You only need to stay with me for 1 month. After a month, I'll let you go. I'll give you $50 million as compensation. And then I'll turn myself in, all right? Even though he phrased it like a question, his tone left absolutely no room for refusal. That barrage of confession hit me so hard my head spun. I hurriedly blurted out, There's no need to turn yourself in. Forget 1 month. Locking me up for life is totally fine. Games, Wi-Fi, snacks, and no need to deal with S13 coworkers or insane clients. This was bliss. How is this any different from paid vacation? With 50 million, why would I ever need to work again? I could just go back to my hometown, buy a house, and enjoy my retirement early. Alistair clearly sounded pleased by my response. He laughed again, told me what time he'd be home that evening, and then hung up. Alistair came back right on time. The two of us sat facing each other, and his gaze lingered on me again and again. I was too embarrassed to meet his eyes. We were both alphas. Being stared at like that by another man was honestly pretty uncomfortable. "I'm an Enigma," Alistair said quietly. "I'm currently in my susceptible period, but don't be afraid. I won't do anything to you without your consent. Because of the susceptible period, I'm not in a fully rational state. That's why I might do things that are hard to understand, like keeping you here against your will." In my eyes, Alistair had always been an incredibly powerful person, the kind of man I aspired to become. Strong, confident, talented, capable. At only 25, aside from the branch company he was currently managing, he also owned businesses overseas. And yet someone so outstanding was now sitting in front of me with his head lowered, fingers fidgeting restlessly, waiting anxiously for my forgiveness. I tried to comfort him. "It's okay. I don't have to go to work, and honestly, I'm pretty happy. I know susceptible periods are hard to control. I understand." Alistair nodded, as if finally able to breathe again. He lifted his reddened eyes and looked at me. "Can I hug you?" The topic changed a little too fast, but when I thought about the 50 million, I nodded anyway. Being held in someone's arms as an alpha felt indescribably awkward. Warm breath brushed against my neck, and I shivered before I could stop myself. When I realized what was happening, my whole body stiffened. Alistair noticed it too. He didn't hold me for long before letting go. Afraid that he might do something irrational later that night, he chose not to stay with me. In just 1 week, I'd gone from stiffly enduring his hugs to being able to sit comfortably in Alistair's arms. I cradled a bowl of freshly washed blueberries and ate them one by one, while Alistair wrapped his arms around me from behind, his head resting on my shoulder as we watched TV together. Suddenly, Alistair spoke. "Wife, your old phone. Someone saved as Shinbao has been calling you a lot lately. Do you want to talk to him?" Ignoring Alistair's choice of address, I remembered that Shinbao's real name was Fred, my ex-boyfriend. The night before Alistair locked me up, Fred had broken up with me. Thinking about it now still made my stomach turn. We'd started dating in my sophomore year of college. 4 whole years together. During that time, I handed over all my salary to him. Whenever I got a bonus, I spent it on gifts for him, buying him the newest phones, while I kept using a 5-year-old one myself, even when the screen cracked, too reluctant to replace it. That day, he'd called me and made me listen as he slept with another alpha. Between soft, breathless sounds, he broke up with me, telling me I was worse than that alpha, that I couldn't satisfy him. A blow straight to a man's pride. So I just shook my head and said, "We've already broken up. There's no need to stay in touch." Alistair lowered his head and kissed my cheek, then leaned in to lightly inhale at my neck. Because of that, I didn't see the obsession and madness flickering in his eyes, as if, just moments ago, if I'd said yes, he would have done something truly terrifying. I hadn't expected that Alistair would mention the matter just yesterday, only for Fred to find this place so quickly. I looked at Fred standing in front of me, holding the milk tea Alistair had ordered for me, my expression completely blank. Fred stepped forward, trying to take my hand, but I avoided him without a trace of hesitation. I took the milk tea from him and turned to head upstairs, planning to continue gaming. Suddenly, Fred dropped to his knees in front of me and started crying. Dylan, please help me, all right? That alpha took photos of me. He's been threatening me for money. I really don't have any other way out. You're the only one who can help me. For the sake of the 4 years we were together, just help me one last time, okay?" I looked at him coldly. "When you were sleeping with him, why didn't you think about the fact that we'd been together for 4 years? And judging by the way that alpha responded to you, you two have been involved for quite a while, haven't you? Besides, what exactly do you think I can help you with?" By the time I finished speaking, Fred's face had already gone deathly pale. But when he heard my last question, a flicker of hope appeared in his eyes. He scrambled to his feet and said urgently, "Aren't you with President Alistair now? That alpha works at his company too. Just talk to President Alistair. Have him threaten to fire him. Make him delete all the photos. That's all." When I didn't immediately agree and my expression remained cold, Fred clenched his teeth. He unbuttoned his shirt, tore off his suppressor patch, and released his pheromones. After so many years together, Fred's scent still held a powerful attraction for me. Even though my mind rejected it, my body reacted against my will. Fred grabbed my hand and pressed my palm tightly against his cheek. He looked gentle and innocent by nature, and when desire crept into his brows and eyes, it was a look I used to love. "Dylan, help me, okay? Even a lifelong mark is fine. We can get married after this. Just help me this once and we'll get married, all right? I'll give you children, okay?" He was an influencer. If those photos were released, his career would be completely ruined. But if we got married, he could even pivot into a couple's account. I wasn't bad looking, maybe I could even help him attract more fans. My vision began to blur. Then suddenly a powerful force yanked me away. A cold, low voice sounded beside my ear. "What do you think you're doing?" I forced myself to focus, my voice hoarse as I called out, "Alistair?" Alistair pulled me into his arms and made a phone call, his face dark as he ignored me completely. Half carrying, half dragging me, he took me into the elevator. Just before the doors closed, I heard a jumble of voices outside, and Fred's pleading cries. It sounded like they were throwing him out. I tried to struggle free from Alistair's hold to look back, but he turned my head firmly away. His gaze lingered on my face for a brief second. Then he suddenly lowered his head and kissed me. This kiss was nothing like the light, restrained touches from before. It was deeper, fiercer, almost savage. Maybe an Enigma's pheromones were simply too powerful, because even my defective alpha pheromones were dragged out in response. Alistair kissed me as if he wanted to steal every last breath from my lungs. I was nearly suffocating before he finally pulled away, clearly reluctant. "Baby, if I hadn't come back in time," he murmured, "would you have gone all the way with him?" The scent of mint and cedar tangled thickly in the air. I was dazed as Alistair kneaded my earlobe between his fingers. "So pitiful," he whispered. "My poor little alpha, so easily pushed into a susceptible state by an omega. If I really let you go one day," he continued softly, "would you cling to anyone who released a bit of pheromones? Let them kiss you just like that? Baby, be my alpha, all right? Only mine." The pheromones grew heavier and heavier, overwhelming my senses until my mind spun and my reason slowly slipped away. I had no idea what I was doing anymore, only that I followed Alistair's words, his movements. It wasn't until he pressed against somewhere far too intimate that a moment of clarity struck me, and I began to struggle wildly. Alistair was left with no choice. Seeing how desperately I was crying and fighting, he finally gave up on advancing any further. When I woke up again, daylight was already flooding the room. My whole body ached as if I'd been run over by a massive truck. I stared blankly at the ceiling for a long while before finally forcing myself to sit up. Thankfully, Alistair hadn't given me a lifelong mark, though the gland at the back of my neck had been bitten into a complete mess. Alistair seemed to be angry. He'd locked up the computer room, the Wi-Fi was gone, the TV didn't work anymore. All that was left was the snack room and a phone that could only contact him. Only now did the reality of being imprisoned really sink in. Not having internet was a disaster. At this point, my daily routine consisted of eating, sleeping, eating, and sending messages to Alistair just to bother him. For the next half-month, Alistair came home on time every evening after work. But he never touched me again. At most, he'd just hug me or give me a light kiss. I tried to get him to restore the internet, but he rejected me mercilessly. I had no idea what exactly he thought I wasn't allowed to see online. Still, when I realized there were only 3 days left until the 1-month deadline, I finally relaxed. As long as I survived 3 more days, I'd be able to go online again. On the last day of the month, Alistair didn't come back. The next day, he still didn't return. Even on the 3rd day, then the 4th, he was nowhere to be seen. I paced anxiously by the door, chewing on my fingernails. My phone buzzed again and again. I already knew it had to be Alistair messaging me. When I opened it, sure enough, it was him. "Don't bite your nails. Last time you did, they bled." Another message followed right after. "The fruit in the fridge has already been washed. Remember to eat it. You need your vitamins." I replied, "When are you letting me out?" When there was no response, irritation crept in, and I sent another message. "Don't go silent like you're dead." My fingers flew across the screen as I sent one last text, anger bubbling over. "The deadline is clearly over. Why aren't you letting me leave?" When he still didn't reply, I called him directly. I snapped. "Alistair, fine, you're not letting me out. But why haven't you restored the internet either? And since yesterday, you won't even let me order takeout. Are you trying to starve me to death?" That word, death, seemed to strike a nerve. After a long pause, he finally sighed. "I went abroad recently. Leaving you home alone made me uneasy. As for takeout, I didn't want you letting random people into the house again. I'll order food for you once I'm back, all right? Whatever you want to eat, I'll get it for you. Realizing there was no reasoning with him, I hung up. Honestly, this imprisoned life was pretty comfortable, except for one thing: no internet. That alone made it unbearable. With nothing else to do, I started playing a scavenger hunt game around the villa. Alistair had installed plenty of hidden pinhole cameras throughout the place. After getting familiar with the house over time, I managed to find several cameras every day. And the moment I unplugged the very last camera in the villa, Alistair called me himself. Alistair was clearly in a bad mood. His tone was still gentle, but I could unmistakably feel the chill beneath it. The front door code is 60918. The key to the master bedroom on the second floor is in the small drawer of the coffee table on the first floor. There's a bank card in the master bedroom. The pin is your birthday. I'll be home before 2 in the morning. You must be back by 8 in the evening. If I don't see you at home by 8 tonight, he said calmly, I'll give you a lifelong mark. The moment I heard that, my whole body shuddered. I hung up immediately, grabbed the keys, and went upstairs. It had been so long since I'd been outside that even the air felt several degrees fresher. Inside the master bedroom, besides the bank card, I found my old phone. I called a ride, then opened VX on my phone. Messages flooded in. In the first 3 days after Alistair locked me up, messages had poured in nonstop, from work group chats, team chats, supervisors, co-workers. Looking at it now, most of them had already deleted me. I'd been removed from the work groups as well. It seemed I'd been fired. The person who'd sent me the most messages, and called me the most, was Fred. He cried and accused me of being heartless, saying I'd ruined everything in his life. But it was his very last message that truly caught my attention. Do you know what kind of person Alistair really is? We've all been fooled by him. The message had been sent a week ago. I hesitated for a moment before replying with a single question mark. Fred replied almost immediately, sending me an address. It was a hot pot restaurant I used to take him to all the time. Fred and I could practically be called childhood sweethearts. We'd attended the same school since kindergarten. In the second half of my sophomore year of college, my parents passed away, and I was left an orphan. He was the one who stayed by my side through it all. I used to believe we'd be together forever, just like my parents. A house, a car, 2 kids, a plain but happy life. But I never expected Fred to cheat. And I never expected myself to end up tangled with an enigma I'd only ever heard about on TV. Calling it being together wasn't even accurate. Alistair had only said he liked me. He'd never given me a clear status. Rather than a relationship, it felt more like being kept. Between Fred and me, who really had wronged whom. At the hot pot restaurant, Fred ordered a yin-yang pot, and all the dishes were soon brought out. Both of us loved spicy food, so I was a little surprised he'd chosen a divided pot. Fred gave a bitter smile. I'm pregnant. I just found out a couple of days ago, so I can't eat anything too oily. You should eat more. I froze. The baby. He cut me off immediately. It's not yours. Honestly, I didn't expect Alistair to let you out, he continued quietly. I thought he'd lock you up for life. I let out an awkward laugh and didn't respond, instead placing the cooked lamb slices from the clear broth into Fred's bowl. We both paused. It was completely instinctive. Back when we used to eat hot pot here, Fred would always act spoiled and ask me to pick out his favorite dishes for him. The corner of Fred's lips curved upward, but tears fell onto the back of his hand. Softly, he said, Dylan, do you know? The day I fell for you was also here at this hot pot place. Back then, it wasn't like this, just a small, shabby shop. Our school had organized a study trip to this city. That night, we didn't eat enough dinner, so the teacher brought our class here for hot pot. It was a tiny place, packed full of students. I still remember it clearly. It was September 18th, around 8:30 in the evening. A few drunk adult alphas noticed an Omega sitting near the entrance. The Omega was dressed perfectly normally, just a t-shirt and shorts, but they still harassed him. All of us Omegas were close and sat together. Those alphas started getting handsy. We were terrified. And then you smashed a soda bottle over the head of the alpha leading them. Dylan, you were really handsome that day. Fred's tears kept falling, showing no sign of stopping. I pulled out a tissue and gently wiped them away for him. September 18th. The date felt strangely familiar. Suddenly, I remembered that the password to Alistair's Villa Gate was 06098, September 18th, 2006. But it felt too coincidental to be real. I shook my head and pushed the thought aside. Fred took the tissue from me and wiped his face himself. Then his expression suddenly turned serious. That alpha, He's one of Alistair's senior executives. He came back from overseas with him. He was sent by Alistair, specifically to seduce me. His goal was to break the two of us apart. I couldn't resist the temptation, and he ended up catching real feelings. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to abort it. To protect the child, he confessed everything. That phone call wasn't made by me. That alpha called you behind my back. But that doesn't change the fact that I cheated. A mistake is still a mistake. Dylan, if you can, you have to stay far away from him. Alistair is a very dangerous, terrifying man. At 8 o'clock that evening, Alistair returned right on time. He turned on the living room lights and saw me sitting on the sofa, my face completely blank. The corner of his lips curved as he sat down beside me. He wrapped an arm around my body, rested his head against my shoulder for a moment, then lightly brushed his nose along my skin, breathing in my scent. "There's omega pheromones on you," he said softly. "Did you go see your ex-boyfriend? Is he still in your heart?" I ignored his borderline unhinged questions and simply pushed my phone toward him. "Since when did I marry you?" I asked flatly. On the screen was a news article, one reporting my marriage to Alistair. The topic had only just started cooling down today. Netizens everywhere couldn't understand how someone like Alistair could end up with a poor defective alpha like me. Honestly, neither could I. What I didn't understand wasn't whether I was worthy of him, but how, in just a little over a month, I'd gone from a single nobody to a married, wealthy spouse. No wonder my former slacking buddies and lunch partners from work had all deleted me. Turns out they thought I'd defected to the other side. Alistair didn't hesitate at all. He calmly took a red velvet box out of his pocket. Inside were 2 rings. One of them was set with several blue gemstones, surrounded by small white diamonds. On the inner band were the initials of Alistair's name. He lowered himself to one knee, took my left hand, and slipped the ring onto my ring finger, then gently pressed a kiss there. "Dylan," he said softly, "I wanted to do this when I was 17. On September 18th, 2006, my 17th birthday, the moment I saw you, I wanted to take you home and make you my wife. Do you know how beautiful you were when you smashed that bottle over the alpha's head and stood in front of those omegas? There was fire burning in your eyes. You were so thin, barely reaching his shoulder, yet fueled by that anger, you dared to stand alone against several adult alphas." I pressed my lips together. The intensity of Alistair's feelings, now completely unrestrained, made me deeply uncomfortable. "There was a whole class there," I said quietly. "Other alphas stepped in too. It wasn't just me." Alistair's broad hand slid to the back of my head, gently pressing down until our foreheads touched. "But you were the first to move," he said. "You were the one who stood in front of them, the first to argue, the first to fight. Do you remember what you said back then?" I'd said a lot of things that night, sworn plenty too. There was no way I could remember exactly what he meant. Alistair clearly knew that as well. He answered for me. "You said, if anyone wanted to bully them, they'd have to step over you first." I thought about it, then shook my head slightly. "That's not quite right. What I said was, if anyone wanted to bully my classmates, they'd have to step over me first." Alistair looked at me, his eyes shining. "Dylan," he said quietly, "I want to be your person too, and I want you to protect me." Enigmas attend schools exclusively for them starting from kindergarten. Because they're too powerful, they're classified as uncontrollable. During susceptible periods, unstable pheromones can easily push them into a berserk state. Because of this, their special schools enforce 9 years of moral education, far stricter than that of ordinary institutions. They're only allowed to enter regular academies in high school, and even then, they remain under constant surveillance. If an Enigma ever goes berserk and harms a normal person, they'll be imprisoned for life. And it was precisely because of this that Alistair became a target of bullying as soon as he entered high school. On September 18th, he'd been dragged into an alley by classmates, beaten badly, and robbed of all his living expenses. "That was the day," Alistair said quietly, "the day you appeared in front of me like a star." I remember thinking, if I were an Omega, would you protect me too? Would I be able to be with you? "Now I'm glad I'm an Enigma," he continued softly. "Even if you're an Alpha, I can still be with you, and I can give you a better life than any Omega ever could. Dylan, will you put it on for me?" He lifted the red velvet box in his hand. Inside was the second ring. Unlike mine, it was simple to the extreme, just a star-shaped design with a tiny blue diamond set in the center. On the inside of the band were my initials. Under his expectant gaze, I took the ring into my hand, but didn't put it on him. I watched as his eyes grew redder and redder, teetering on the edge of either tears or something far more dangerous. "Restore the internet at home first," I said calmly, "and unlock the game room. If you behave well after that," I added, "then I'll put the ring on for you." Alistair looked up in shock, then pure delight. Tears fell one by one, and for a brief moment, my heart softened. He stood up, bent down to kiss my cheek, and immediately made a phone call. Not long after, the internet was back. Once I confirmed the connection was restored, I grabbed the keys Alistair had given me and sprinted straight for the game room. My promotion match was waiting. In the days that followed, Alistair could be said to indulge me in almost everything, but it was all only a fleeting illusion. Enigmas were obsessive at their core. Their possessiveness far exceeded that of alphas, by more than just a little. He had already prepared the prenuptial agreement, and even his will. 80% of all assets under his name had been transferred to me, while the remaining 20% was reserved to keep the company running. As I flipped through the documents, it would have been a lie to say I wasn't moved. But I also knew exactly what would happen once I put that ring on Alistair's finger. "You're giving me everything?" I asked. "Won't your family object?" Alistair shook his head. "My parents divorced when I was very young. The old man's getting on in years now. He can't be bothered with me anymore. All he wants is to fish and tend his flowers." I nodded in agreement and continued working on my manuscript. I used to be a designer. Now that I wasn't working anymore, and had already played every game imaginable, I started drawing comics instead, earning a modest income. Alistair was on vacation recently and stayed home the whole time. In front of me, he calmly reinstalled every single camera I'd previously taken down. When I asked why, he said that not being able to see me while at work made him feel insecure. Remembering something I'd noticed earlier, I shoved the latest model watch into his hand. "Then why did you put a listening device and a tracker in this?" He wrapped his arms around my waist, looking utterly aggrieved. "Wife, you used to like Omegas, and I don't even have a proper status yet. What if you get tempted away by some Omega outside? Can't you just stay home and not go out? You never liked going out before. Why are you going out every day now? Have you started finding me annoying?" I had no idea where Alistair learned these little tricks, but lately he'd grown very good at acting cute, playing pitiful, and clinging to me, all of which were extremely effective on an alpha like me. Unfortunately, he hadn't quite mastered the skill. He could only keep up the obedient act for a few minutes before revealing his true self. "So you do find me annoying, don't you? You never take me with you when you go out. And these past few days, every time you leave, it's to see your ex. He's already pregnant with someone else's child. Why are you still tangled up with him? Do I need to get you pregnant for you to stay home peacefully? But I can't bear to. I've heard giving birth is painful. I don't want you to hurt. Dylan, you're giving me the cold shoulder." As he spoke, he started kissing along my neck again. I covered his mouth and said helplessly, "Hey, slow down. You're talking way too much. And since when have I ever given you the cold shoulder? You're seriously overthinking things. Besides, Fred and I were together for so long. Even if there's no romantic feeling left, we can still be considered friends." Alistair said quietly, "Friends who once slept together?" I choked, and couldn't answer for a moment. My feelings toward Fred really were complicated. He'd occupied almost half of my life. Many of the major turning points in my past had been spent with him by my side. Even my understanding of Alistair, at least in the beginning, had been influenced in part by Fred. And as for Alistair, if it weren't for that sudden imprisonment, which forced me to slowly understand the depth of his feelings for me, we would have simply missed each other in this lifetime. Alistair was outstanding. No one wouldn't like him. And I felt the same. Actually falling in love with him was only a matter of time. I cupped Alistair's flawless face in my hands. I felt that the time had finally come. "I know that Alpha was sent by you to seduce Fred," I said quietly. "And the reason I went to see them a few days ago was to check on them, to see whether that Alpha was truly good to him." Fred grew up in a single-parent household. His Omega father passed away very early. By the time we were in high school, his Alpha father was being kept by a wealthy woman, and soon had another child. He was never valued. "I'm the same as Fred. We both need a great deal of love," I continued softly. "Back then, we were lovers, but we were also family, and compared to being his partner, I was more like his older brother. We both knew that two people starved of love weren't suitable for each other. But we had no choice. Back then, we only had each other. I'm actually grateful you sent that alpha to him, I said. At least now, he knows what it feels like to be loved, even if that love isn't exactly normal. For the first time, I took the initiative and kissed Alistair, pressing my lips gently to his trembling eyelid. You think you're not normal too, don't you? I whispered. That's why you're afraid I'll leave you. But husband, I said softly, I want you to know. I really like it. You make me feel deeply loved. The games you downloaded for me on the computer. The washed fruit always waiting in the fridge. The snack room filled entirely with things I like. And the courage it took for you to give me all your assets, I added lightly. Weren't you afraid I'd take the money and run? At that, a flicker of panic crossed Alistair's eyes, as if he truly feared I might leave him. I reached up, removed the star-shaped ring hanging around my neck, and slipped it onto his finger. Alistair, I said softly. On the night of September 18th, I became your star. And on the morning of August 8th, you became my son. Husband, do you want to have a wedding? Extra epilogue. When I hung up the phone, I actually let out a quiet sigh of relief. Fred needed far too much love, and loving him had exhausted me. I'd only made it that far through sheer responsibility. My alcohol tolerance was terrible, yet that night I staggered toward the lakeside with a bottle in my hand. Before I collapsed, I thought, if I fall into the lake, then I'll go see Mom and Dad. I hadn't lived up to their expectations. I hadn't become someone exceptional. But I'd tried my best. I was just too tired. I missed them too much. I thought, they wouldn't blame me, right? But the next morning, I didn't see my parents. Instead, I saw green lawns and a quiet lake. This was a lakeside villa, and its owner was my newly appointed boss. He told me he liked me. That moment, watching the sun's reflection ripple across the lake, I finally smiled in relief. How unbelievable. I had actually met the sun. The end.